Hi everyone, my name is Julie. This is Keep Calm with Books and Coffee. I talk about books on this channel, mainly books about magic, and if you want to see more of that, you can subscribe down below. Welcome or welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about my goals and stats from 2024 and see how I did on everything. Hello everyone and welcome in. It is time to look back at 2024 and see how this all went. So I have lots of notes here. I had started to rewatch my goals video from last year, but I realized that I couldn't surprise myself. I had already written out everything that was in my bullet journal, and therefore I knew what all of it was. So I did not surprise myself. So we're just gonna go with going through the goals and talking about how I did. So this will be a little bit chatty if you want to grab a snack or a drink or settle in for a little bit of a chat. So today we're going to start out with the goals that I had written out for 2024 and how that went. So my initial goal, first goal, as always, is my goal to read how many books I wanted to. And I set this at 100 initially, but ended up increasing it to 125, I think, in the middle of the year. And I did hit this. I hit actually 150 books total that I had read. So if you look on Goodreads or Storygraph, you're going to see it at 136, but that's because my DNFs are not counted in there. In my spreadsheet, I'm at 150 because I read 136 and DNF'd 14 books, which actually feels a little low. I'm surprised it's only that many because honestly, I felt like I DNF'd a lot more this year, but I think a big part of that was unhauling books that I didn't necessarily start or read enough of to, mark. Like I might have tried a page or two or heard enough about the book that I decided I wasn't interested and unhauled. I unhauled more than I DNF'd this year, I'm sure of it. Then I did set a goal of 20,000 pages and 700 hours on Storygraph. So I hit 18,344 pages on Storygraph, which isn't quite 20,000. I'm still happy with this. I continue to increase the number of books that I read via audiobook, but I'm actually pretty happy that I read that much physically. This counts both my ebook pages and my physical pages, simply because I am trying to balance that a little more, but I also just love audiobooks. So in the end, I listened to 824 hours of audiobook, which is over 700. Crazy. I love this stat. I have increased this goal a little bit for next year, and I'm just excited because I just love audiobooks and I love that I hit this goal. These are just for fun. These are just to keep track of how much I'm reading in comparison to each other. They're not necessarily things. I used to try to hit 40,000 pages in a year, and I just had that goal for some reason, but now with audiobooks, I split it out into hours and pages. My TBR goal was to have less than 80 books on my shelf, and at the end of 2024, I had 75 books. I started at 105, so I have reduced it by 30, which I am really, really happy about, especially considering the goal that I set for myself this year to reduce it by half, so that's 30 some books. So I will hopefully be able to do this again this coming year. A lot of this was unhauling as well as reading from my shelves. I feel like I got serious about this in the fall and kind of really took it on at the end of the year, and then kind of tapered off in December because I was doing rereads and sort of casually reading. So I wanted to get back that energy here in January. I wanted to purchase less than 50 books, and I purchased 48. So I squeaked in just underneath this goal. It got really difficult here at the end of the year. Some things that I kind of want to look at next year as far as the books that I purchased was, after looking at them, I had subscribed to a romance subscription at my local indie, and I won't be doing that this year, so I think that will help reduce the number of books I take in. And also I might cancel my Illumicrate subscription. I'm sort of on the fence about this because I can skip and get the ones that I'm interested in, but I'm considering getting rid of that as well. I just feel like I am more and more often not interested in getting books that I am not seeking out. Like, I'm not interested in getting surprises about books. I want to be more intentional about my buying in the books that I'm choosing to purchase. And those two types, like a subscription box, doesn't always let me do that. I do tend to look up spoilers, and I tend to only actually let the ones come through that I'm super interested in, but I also am on the fence about it. So that's what I'm trying to decide for 2025. Then another part of my TBR goal for the year was to eliminate my 2019 purchases as well as books I didn't know when I purchased them. This sort of phraseology came out of my TBR and review project, where I looked at each year of purchases to kind of read from and see how I did year to year. I haven't done that in the past year or so, and I don't know that I will continue to do that because I'm just working to get my TBR up to date as much as possible. But this past year, I was trying to read everything or unhaul everything I had purchased in 2019, or if I didn't know when I purchased it. So I will put the exact numbers here because I don't have that piece of paper in front of me and I can't remember where I put it. So I'm gonna have to hunt it down, because I wrote down how many books I had on my TBR from 2019, I believe 2020, and the unknown years. And in total, at the beginning of 2024, it started at like 34 books, and I believe I'm down to 9 of them. So I have not eliminated 2019 and unknown, but I have reduced it significantly. I'm actually really, really, really happy with that. Like, I don't necessarily have to get to literally everything, but me working through these, unhauling things, trying things, and I had some stats I think that I talked about already, that I had unhauled so many books, unhauled and DNF'd a lot of things that were on the backlist of my TBR simply because my reading tastes have changed in the past few years. So I'm continuing to get different purchases. This is part of the reason I want to update my TBR as much as possible, get as close to when I purchase the books as possible to when I'm reading them, so that I am in the mood to read them when I purchase them. So that was a bit of a ramble, but I just feel like I'm really happy with how this all turned out, even though the goal isn't technically complete. Then I also wanted to read 4 nonfiction books, and I read 1, technically 2, but 1 was comedy, and that wasn't the intention of the goal. The goal was more to be the intention of either biography or commentary or learning, that type of thing. So the comedy book wasn't really the intention of the goal. So I have read 1 of those. I wanted to go to 8 book clubs in my local indie bookstore, and I went to 4, so I only did about half of this. And next year I've expanded this to not just my indie book club, but buddy reads, Patreon book clubs, that type of thing, because I did do a few of those type of reads last year in 2024 that didn't like count towards this goal, but that was the feeling that I was going for. Reading as part of a community and reading alongside others and talking to people about books, not just the physically going to the bookstore to talk about the specific book. Then I wanted to complete 10 series, and I completed 6. So I didn't quite get there, but I did make some progress. But this is a year of series. We're gonna concentrate on series this year. Another goal that I posted was to finish updating my personal library spreadsheet, and I worked on this last year. I had scanned my library into Libib, I think it was the app that I did, and I don't think I actually need a library spreadsheet personally. I think there's too much turnover. I tend to unhaul things pretty regularly, as well as, add to my collection. So if my collection was a little more stable, I might be able to keep up with it, but I personally do not do well with that. I struggle to keep things updated. I'm kind of lucky that I keep up with my reading spreadsheet as much as I do, and I do keep my own TBR in there and up to date. So as much as I wish I was able to keep up with this and its goal maybe in the future, I don't need it right now, and it's not helping me in any way right now. It's just causing me more stress. So I don't think I need to do this. So even though I did it, I also learned something from the goal, and I'm not going to make it a goal to keep up with this or anything like that. Then I talked about in the video that I wanted to keep up with my book spending and selling, and how much I was spending and earning off of books, and I did do this. I had previously kept it only in OneNote, and I moved it into my reading spreadsheet using Allie from the Hardback Hoarder spreadsheet. She has a transactions tab in there, and I did do better with this. I don't think it's completely accurate. The total spent says that I spent $862.25 on books, and that I earned $365.75, and I don't think that is completely accurate. I think I'm missing a few things in there on both sides, but that's generally where I was, and this is more accurate than I was in my OneNote notes. So I will continue to improve on this. I continue to want to keep track of this, but something I didn't quite do perfectly this first time around, which you're allowed to do. The first time you do it, it's not gonna be perfect. So, but that's how the tracking went this first time around. Then one final goal or project I was working on was the 24 in 24, and in total I read 8 of these. I DNF'd 4. I unhauled 1 without reading. So all in all, I had 11 left that I did not touch. So we're going to try to work on that again in 2025. So let's move into the stats. I'm going to be pulling this from both my spreadsheet, like I said, that is from Allie from Hardback Quarter, as well as my Storygraph stats. So let's jump into it. So as far as monthly reads, I read the most in June, which does not surprise me. This was the Amazing Readathon month, and I read 42 books. That's incredible to me that I read that much in one month. My least read months were April, July, and November, which I each read 7 in. And I actually want to take a look at this and see if this was after readathons each time. I know July was, and I know November was, but November also kind of gets a pass because it was the beginning of the holiday season. I was doing a lot of prep for Vlogmas, so I think that gets a bit of a pass, but July especially was right after a readathon month. So I'm working in 2025 to try and balance how often I participate in readathons as well as how intensely I participate in readathons, because I don't want to have these big slump months. I think if I showed you my stats from Storygraph that show how much I read each month, it's very, very up and down. It's a roller coaster, and I want it to be a little more even if I can help it. And I'm not trying to disparage any of these readathons. I appreciate the creators so much, and I am so thankful to be included or be able to participate in all of these. I just want to be conscious of how much stress I'm putting on myself in this coming year to participate in readathons and not be stressed before, during, or after, because I want to have fun. So that's all I'm saying here. So let's talk about my reading sources. So I wanted to kind of split this up into older books on my TBR, more current books on my TBR, and then things that I borrowed. So books that I owned before 2023, that I had purchased before 2023, I read 32 of those in 2024. Books that I purchased in 2023 or 24 was 28, and then I borrowed 76 books, which is crazy. This has always been my library usage, and my owned usage has always been about even. This isn't quite even because it's 60 versus 76, so it's not completely even, but it's not also way one way or another. So that's very interesting to me, and it interests me that continues to stay the same, that I read books that are on my physical TBR as well as ones that I borrow from the library or such. Then if we look at source material, how I read the books, I read 72 audiobooks, I read 44 ebooks, 20 physical books, and then I tandem read both a audiobook and with my eyeballs for 11 books, which is really interesting to me. I think that number is going to increase in 2024 or 2025 because I have learned that is something I enjoy. I had kind of written it off before. I hadn't tried it very much, and this year I really leaned into it towards the end of the year, and I'm excited to do it more in 2025. Author status is another interesting one that I like to look at. 86 of the books that I read this year, I had read the author before, and that includes rereads, that includes books that I, from my favorite authors, whatever. And then I read 50 new to me authors, and I read 7 debuts. I don't tend to really pay attention to debut authors and new releases, like I said, so I would like to increase this, but I don't know that it will, because I tend to reread a lot, and debuts are just something I don't check out very often. Not for any slight against the authors or anything, I don't tend to check out new releases. I'm kind of out of the habit of paying attention to that. The next stat, intended audience, is one that continues to surprise me every year, and it is just that I read 121 books aimed at an adult audience, which just continues to skyrocket. My adult reading just continues to increase. My new adult was at 1, and my YA was at 24, so this does not surprise me. And then I read 1 middle grade book. So I am not surprised by any of that. I am just constantly choosing to read more and more adult books at this point. Then as far as books that were part of a series or not, I read 96 that were part of a series and 52 that were standalones. That doesn't count my 2 technically non-fiction books. Those were, I don't categorize them this way because they're not, I just feel like they're separate. Then I had a few stats on diversity in that 46% of my reading was diverse, which is not great. I'm going to continue to try and increase this over the next year. 68 had some kind of diverse representation in them. 40 had some kind of queer representation in them, and 48 were own voices. So that Allie's spreadsheet did the math for me, saying that 46% of my reads were diverse. So there is some overlap in those categories, just depending on the book. But I feel like that is getting better, but I still want to increase my stats and representation in my reads as much as possible. So I will be trying to improve on that number in the coming year. But that is a recap of my goals and stats for 2024. If you have any thoughts or feelings or want to share anything about the books that I talked about, or I guess the goals that I talked about today, please let me know down below. You can also like and subscribe while you're down there. And if you aren't feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me one of the stats or graph emojis that are in the emoji selection. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!